On today's show, I get to welcome Roxana Bekemohammadi, founder and executive director for the United States Hydrogen Alliance. And we get to talk 45V tax incentives and the three pillars and everything that the USHA is doing to promote the hydrogen economy. It's big news. It's going to shape the future of the hydrogen industry worldwide. So with that said, I'll cue up the intro and then we can get into the show. So the big questions in the energy industry today are: how is hydrogen the primary driving force behind the evolution of energy? Where is capital being deployed for hydrogen projects globally? And where are the best investment opportunities for early adopters who recognize the importance of hydrogen? I will address the critical issues and give you the information you need to deploy capital. Those are the questions that will unlock the potential of hydrogen, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Paul Rodden, and welcome to the Hydrogen Podcast. Okay, like I said, I'm joined today by Roxana Bekemohammadi. She is a distinguished leader in the hydrogen and fuel cell industry, known for her unique experience in policy advocacy, public service, and technology commercialization. She is regularly called upon to present on the current and future status of the U.S. hydrogen economy at conferences, legislatures, and other political arenas. In 2020, she founded the Western States Hydrogen Alliance, championing hydrogen policies in the Western states. With the passing of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act in 2021, the organization expanded to all 50 states and is now known as the United States Hydrogen Alliance, or the USHA. The organization has blazed a pathway for the U.S. hydrogen economy by successfully passing 16 hydrogen state bills across the United States since its inception in 2020. Roxana led a lobbying firm focused on hydrogen policy in California prior to the USHA. She also served as an advocate and technical expert in previous roles across multiple sectors, including energy, zero-emission vehicles, workforce development, technical education. Lastly, Roxana served as a public servant at the California Air Resources Board, an air quality regulatory state agency. Academically, Roxana holds a master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of California, Irvine, and served as a student researcher at the National Fuel Cell Research Center. She also holds a bachelor's of science in chemical engineering from UCLA. Her education, combined with a diverse professional background, further positions her as a leading voice in the clean energy industry. Roxana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me.
Quite a background. Okay, so the United States Hydrogen Alliance. Can you kind of work me through what the Alliance is doing to promote the hydrogen industry?
Absolutely. It's a business trade association. We're focused on advocating for hydrogen across all 50 states. We work with state legislatures to first educate them on hydrogen, and then we also build state champions in those state legislatures and eventually run legislation with those that are advocates for hydrogen. And so we really intend on representing the hydrogen industry. Yes, we have a membership-based organization, but the way that we were founded was extremely based on being an advocate for the entire industry. You know, we operate with really strict ethical guidelines. We never run special interest bills. We run bills that are going to help the entire industry. And I mean, some could disagree with that, you know, if they have a specific way that they want the industry to come out and look like, but really what we want is an even playing field for everyone. And of course, we want the advancement for clean hydrogen, and you know, we're going to be talking about that a bit today, but that's the role that we play. But really, I mean, it started with the dream of taking lessons learned from California and going eastward. So we really do have this Americana spirit. We want to be pioneers. We've been wanting to trail the blaze the trail essentially for hydrogen, create new economies in different states. And that's exactly what we've been able to do over the last 3 years. And we're really looking forward to helping the US hydrogen economy blossom. And so that is our intention. That's what we've worked on. I think that's what we've accomplished. And that is what we're hoping to further do.
I remember the first time I got to see you speak, it was on a panel here in Houston. and you absolutely dominated when it came to regulatory policies and just guiding the panel down that pathway and what the U.S. needs to do in terms of regulation. I was highly, highly impressed by everything you had to say out there. So yeah, the USHA doing great things to move hydrogen forward in the U.S. Big news came out today. 45V has been released. We now know what the federal government is going to look at in terms of the three pillars. For everyone listening in right now, can you guide us through how you see the three pillars, kind of that 35,000 foot view on the regulatory side and what that means?
Yeah, so just broadly, our organization has had to take that vantage point in general to see how things would develop for this industry. And so when we see the three pillars, it creates restrictions essentially. And that is kind of the worst thing that you can do for an industry in general. As a former regulator, one of the most important things as a regulator is to get the special regulatory framework just right. And it has to have the right mix of what we call carrot and stick. And so carrot is a mandate and carrot is an incentive and the stick is a mandate. And so what we're seeing with the three pillars is that I would say the stick was extremely heavy-handed, and the incentive, which was what came out of the IRA, this 45V, the code section for hydrogen, I mean, it was big. It's huge for hydrogen, but what it did is the stick, the three pillars, we'll call it three sticks, shall we, has dwarfed the entire carrot. There is no carrot, I would say, at this point. And actually it hurts its intention actually to really deploy clean hydrogen in a cost-effective way. And to be honest, I mean, subsidies never really make it extremely cost-effective, but it definitely lowers the barrier to entry. And so, I would say that the three pillars, has probably done more damage almost emotionally and mentally for the industry. And then of course it's the outcome is also going to, hurt the economic viability of these projects, of course. But I still think that when you take an industry, and this is something that I was really passionate about as a policymaker, is that you can't really toy around so much with industry. They're making business plans for the next decade. And so when you put them in a tight hold like that, you're actually, causing, you're hurting your own cause, essentially. You're sending out a ripple effect into the industry. And, you had basically in a 9-month period, $22.5 billion given to this industry, which just infused it with so much energy. And then to really take that all apart with the three pillars, I mean, it's substantial. I mean, when we see that there are folks pulling out of hubs because of the guidance, even before the guidance came out, because of the three pillars, I think government got it wrong. And I'm saying this as a person who has immense empathy for policymakers, because it's a thankless job. If you're elected, if you're a career, policymaker, it's a thankless job, but they got it wrong. They certainly got it wrong, and we're going to see that. And so the question is, how do we rectify it as an industry?
Yeah. And, I had talked with, and I mentioned this to you earlier, I talked with the state of New Mexico about the hub that they wanted to get pushed through. And when they found out that they didn't get selected for that, is when their partners said, all right, we're moving forward then, because now we know we don't have these regulatory hurdles to have to jump through. And I think what you're saying is right. A lot of the money that was looking to get into this, it's just they're scared now. It's like the stock market. It's a lot of fear and emotion driven capital allocation. When I've tried to take the position on these three pillars that I can see where some of it's coming from. You don't want to don't want to have a project in Texas pulling credits from Wyoming wind farms or something. I don't know, but I get there's a little bit of geographic maneuverability that has to be taken into account, and there's certainly, I get additionality.
Mm-hmm.
If the grid is already taxed, like it's here in Texas, the grid's already taxed. You don't want to divert some of the electricity that's being pulled off renewables into generating hydrogen. Some of that I do understand, but to be as aggressive as this is, it seems excessive, and especially with time matching. I think that's the one that set off the European market, was the whole time matching thing, and that was one of the things that they backed off on substantially. But okay, we don't have to do hourly time matching. You can do monthly or yearly for right now. But it seems like what is it? 2028, I think, for time matching was their time frame. It's too quick.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get these wind farms and solar farms ramped up in 4 years from nothing.
Yeah. Well, this is reflective of, there's more philosophical, component to this, which is, there's going to be different perspectives on everything, right? Reality is for everybody, but there are always points of reality here. And so, but there are other considerations. Okay. So yes, as we're adding additional loads onto the grid, it's can be highly detrimental. And of course there's all these other components, of course, the regional component of it. I just addressed additionality, and then of course, being able to deliver the energy, and of course the time matching piece. Okay, there are reasons for this. Absolutely, I can understand that as well. But this is where a policymaker has to do this gracefully.
Yeah.
Has to be very methodical about it, because they really have to listen to industry about, hey, what is feasible? Because my end goal is to advance this industry. My end goal is to create more energy resilience. My end goal is actually to ensure that we have enough energy available and that we're decarbonizing and we're moving toward our environmental goals. That was the whole point of the BIL and the IRA. They're not achieving that because and this happens a lot in the regulatory making process, is they didn't listen to industry enough. They didn't compromise enough, because what happens is, and what, is very likely to happen, is that this gets stewed in lawsuits. This gets stewed in pushback. This gets essentially what they're trying to accomplish gets diminished completely. And that's what's kind of sad about this whole process, is that the government has shot itself in the foot. And now the other thing is, as a policymaker, if you're really going to be good at your job in the regulatory space, and it doesn't matter, it can be in the legislative arena as well, you have to put things on an even playing field, because once you create an uneven playing field for different kinds of technologies, then you already picked winners and losers, and you also ensured that there's not going to be a cohesive interaction, kind of synergistic environment for all the different energy types, essentially. If this is done on an even playing field with battery electric vehicles, with the grid, with nuclear, and all of our different resources that we can leverage, then it's easier. And that's why, and it actually gives us a real foundation to move forward in a cohesive manner. So for instance, carbon intensity. Carbon intensity is already one thing that is helpful about carbon intensity versus different colors, is that carbon intensity makes it an even playing field for everybody. And it makes the regulatory piece easier. We have the GREET model. It is well established. People understand it, and we can leverage it. Moving forward to carbon intensity actually makes the deployment of clean hydrogen easier. That's how it should be done. With how the 45V guidance has been structured, it has said carbon intensity is not as important. Carbon intensity is no longer something we're going to acknowledge. And actually, the thing that we've invested decades in, it's policy. this way that we're evaluating technologies, we're kind of throwing it away. We're saying it's important, but it's really not, because what is more important is now these three pillars that are not being actually imposed on other industries. So how is hydrogen actually supposed to help bring on more renewables onto the grid if now you have no way of actually deploying the hydrogen piece and the storage piece that's associated with hydrogen? How are we really going to decarbonize steel and cement and all of these other industrial processes that the government really wants to decarbonize, but now you made that clean hydrogen more expensive? There's no mandate on those industries to go green. Yes, there's some ESG components and whatnot, but this is poor policymaking, unfortunately.
And which is funny, I think, to me, because, and I'm talking about this in an upcoming podcast, is a lot of these hubs that got selected. It's got some of them, not all of them, but have very strong blue and green parts associated with them, including a lot of nuclear out there, and the time matching, the regionality, and additionality especially completely throws away the nuclear option, which is one of the best.
And hydro.
And hydro and geothermal. All of them.
Yeah. I mean, aren't those are low carbon solutions, and so this is policy making done in a silo. It's policy making that's been done in a way that hasn't looked at all the sides here. And I was actually so excited for this administration, because I thought, wow, this administration is really looking at our country's energy portfolio in a very systematic, systems level way that we need to look at it this way, because again, these are all sources that need to be integrated, because we need a diverse energy portfolio to ensure that there's resilience in our energy systems, that we can move forward successfully. So I mean, you're right. And actually the hubs having that kind of, even in itself, kind of that diversity is indicative of the fact that a proper and successful in all respects, right? With execution, economics, and even from an environmental angle, it's going to take a multifaceted approach. And so when you come in there and you say, nope, it's got to fit exactly like this, you've just lost the ability to create. You just said no to American ingenuity. You just said no to kind of the problem solving that actually might solve really our complex energy, our complex energy system that we're embarking on, because we want to decarbonize, but we need more and more energy. And on top of that, we have more conflict, geopolitically over energy.
Yep.
And on top of that, you add in climate change and its effect, the fact that our systems are less, again, resilient toward new weather events due to climate change. I mean, I don't think we're really setting ourselves up for success in America, because I don't think this is about hydrogen. This is actually about America and our ability to access reliable energy, and really, at the end of the day, cost effective or low cost energy. I mean, those aren't real anymore. And it's only getting worse because we all haven't done a good job together cohesively to solve our energy crisis.
That's a good point. And so to kind of pull away from the three pillars, because the 45D just got released, let's take some time, kind of look into it in detail, and we can jump into it in more detail and later on bring you back on the show and really dive into it. But I want to talk about kind of the second part of this discussion, and that's what you just talked about. How can we unify together to get our point across Washington? And I as well as I do, I get hit all the time with questions of, you talk about green too much, you talk about blue too much. Mm-hmm. This is about a much bigger this is much bigger than just one type of technology, whether it's electrolytic or thermolytic or anything in between. How do we get together and make that energy march up to DC saying, we're ready for this transition. Help us to get there. What do we do?
I think, you know, I don't think I'm a really easy person for this industry, because I won't give you the typical answer. I'm not, and this is what frustrates me at conferences, and maybe this is what you're, you know, referring to earlier. Look, there's no, my answer really for this industry is you need to step up. And really, it's like you stepping up as an individual. This is a paradigm shift that we are required to have. So any answer I give you is kind of not only, hey, a standard, you know, we need to do, you know, A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. No, it's we need to do all the above, and we need to challenge ourselves personally and as organizations. And so one thing is we need the practical solutions. We need our working logical brains, you know, moving and firing up and doing its actual job. But I think we need to bring a little like heart and soul and realism and unity to the conversation, because we're in such a, you know, and I think this is reflective of just human nature right now and what's going on, you know, and I can't blame anybody. There's so much fear, there's so much scarcity. We're sitting here as an industry going like, you know, we need to battle within ourselves. And I've been telling folks from the very beginning that this has all occurred, that we had all this money flow in. I said, look, you guys, we used to be in a pond. We were big fish in our ponds. We loved our silo. We are now in the ocean and we are shrimp. That's the reality of it, you guys. We're not big. We're not mean. We're not, you know, we're not full of dollars. Most folks are in the red. We're not this advanced creature to take on the entire energy industry. We're shrimp. We need to come together, become the shadow of a whale. We're not there to fight within each other. Even when I've worked individually with any companies, you know, they're still, you know, operating in small niches, right? So they're not even full on real competitors. And so for us to go in and fight amongst ourselves, this is why we're in the position we're in. It's because we didn't unify. It's because we didn't see the bigger picture. It's because we didn't level up. We are now in the big leagues. So we need to act like we're in the big leagues. And right now, that means it's taking a really systems level perspective and saying, hey, you know, everybody wants to come in at hydrogen for their own purposes. And this is, I'm talking about the traditional hydrogen industry, those that, you know, they make their bread and butter is hydrogen. What we need to do is level up and say, hey, I know that, hey, you might, let's just say, I'm using this example, and maybe this is a bad example, but hey, I'm IGC A and I'm IGC B. You know, technically we're competitors. I don't care that you guys are competitors. You're not competitors yet, right? Because as we can see that in another year, right? It was like less than 2 years after the IRA that everything poof can be gone. So really everyone needs to come together and say, we can hash out our differences, but as of right now, from my perspective as a lobbyist, we failed at coalition building. We don't have an industry. This is why we're in the position we're in. And now that 45V is out, we need to come together for the comment period and really say, hey, we need to loosen, we need to like whittle down these sticks because the carrot has disappeared. So let's try to get a balance here for all of us to thrive, because what's ironic about all of this stuff is like, you know, we're like, hey, the thought was 45V is just enabling more, you know, green hydrogen versus blue, but then I think it's hurt green hydrogen more than it's hurt blue. And it's like, we're not accomplishing anything other than, and this might be a reflection of why the government equally has not come up with a good solution for us.
And, you know, Like I mentioned New Mexico earlier. Exxon's going to be doing their thing. Their Baytown is going to be pumping out hydrogen day and night, just monstrous amounts of it. Those are just going to keep going. Outside of the U.S., you've got Saudi Arabia starting to pump out grain. Japan just put in, what is it, $21 billion into their hydrogen investments. Australia is going to keep running forward. Germany and Spain, the entire European backbone plan is going to keep moving forward. The rest of the world's going to keep moving forward. They're going to find their way forward, and because they want to. The U.S. has to be able to not just meet it, but exceed it, because we do want to be global energy leaders. And it's going to take some adults in the room to stand up, say, quit bickering. Let's move forward together. And, once we have this industry established, then you can start fighting over the $50 trillion pie. But let's get that first before we start fighting.
Yeah, thank you for perspective. Thank you. You're right.
Yeah.
100%. There's over 130 countries that had national strategies before the US did. What does that say? And we have a pretty established hydrogen industry here.
We do.
We are looking at hydrogen being the next tactical fuel according to the US Army. What does that mean? When Russia is saying in 2020 they want to be the #1 exporter of hydrogen, what does that indicate? I mean, this is much bigger than us and how we're squabbling. We're squabbling over crumbs. And that was what why we were organized too. I mean, how USHA existed, because I went to the hydrogen industry in California. I said, why are we settling for crumbs? And we're still settling for crumbs. You're right. There's a global marketplace that we can leverage. We should be the global leaders, 100%. But we're sitting here and we're arguing amongst each other. So our industry needs perspective. Our industry needs to go like, hey, you know what? We need to actually promote the production in the country. We need to be the leader, globally, because this isn't, do we want to maintain our leadership, globally as the US? And that's why we have a campaign that's called Hydrogen Can Save America, Facts Not Fear, because that's the reality of it. We should be talking about decarbonizing the entire North America, through decarbonizing our freight corridor system. We should talk about, bringing our entire supply chain for this hydrogen industry into the Americas. We need to be preparing. We shouldn't be doing what we're doing so far. And so that it's a great disappointment, but within opportunities like this, it highlights what's going wrong and what can be done right. And what we need to do is change our perspective as an industry, look at it from a systems level. That means global level. And that means that we need to identify and get really clear about the opportunities. You're bringing up so many opportunities now. Europe is leading with the amount of hydrogen projects that they have. And guess what? They're looking at other continents, to actually bring that hydrogen in. And so the question is, are we going to continue losing our ground? And
I mean, it's a global market share that we're losing.
Absolutely.
Because there is an economic underlying base to all of this. And, when I said 50 trillion earlier, that's probably a small number. It's gonna be up there, and it's up for grabs. I know a lot of private industry is already making their way to it. I mentioned Exxon earlier, Chevron, a lot of the oil and gas super majors have heavily invested into it.
Solar and wind developers, everybody else outside the hydrogen industry is coming in because they know how to do this.
Well, I'll tell you what. I know we're bumping up on time here. Let's keep meeting. Let's start driving some solutions. Okay. Maybe the next time we get together, let's dive into the 3 pillars a little bit more, into some detail, and see if we can maybe pull out some economic solutions. We can find some silver linings in these, and if not, we can say, okay, well, let's go make our names known in DC and how we can get some of these changes affected.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for that. And that reminds me of something that I like to keep telling folks is that, remember, these policies do exist, but it doesn't mean that it means that you can't just produce hydrogen anymore. Yes, they're there. They're cherries on top. They're subsidies, but it doesn't mean that the hydrogen industry is dead. We can keep moving forward in anything. I highly recommend folks continue building out projects, because when you're on the ground, it actually helps propel the policy. It helps to justify the policy, to help advance you. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged. If anything, keep going. And really, my dream is to see all of these, I call them settlements. I'm kind of cute about this, but I want to see all of these little hydrogen settlements, right? I want to continue to see hydrogen growing in all of these different regions. And, I hope, I'm praying that you're right. We should all be out in DC. We should be marching in DC, because this isn't about hydrogen. This is about humanity. This is about this country. This is so much broader. And if we can open up our eyes, we can finally see that and actually really be the strong voice that we should be. Because 100%, I think what DC what happened is always going to be indicative and a reflection of us as an industry. Always, anything that occurs is going to be a reflection of who we are as people and as organizations. What this has shown me is that we are certainly not aligned as an industry. We could have had this be fair for everybody. It could have been fair across all energy systems, and it's not. So I think we need to do better.
Let's keep this conversation moving forward. Let's get, like I said, some adults in the room, bring everyone together. Let's all have a seat at the table where we can discuss policy, economics, and make the best fit for everyone. Before we sign off today, the United States Hydrogen Alliance, if listeners want to know more about this alliance, where can they go?
Oh, well, they can go to our website, which is www.ushydrogenalliance.org. We're pretty active on LinkedIn as well. You can catch us on there. You can catch me on LinkedIn. But I just want to thank you, Paul, for having a voice, for being a voice for hydrogen, for having these really important conversations. And I think that we have to lead by example, and you're leading by example. So I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, that's it for me, everyone. Again, we're going to have Roxana back to discuss these 3 pillars in more detail as we're starting to uncover what they actually mean. So stay tuned for further podcasts. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, this is Paul. I hope you liked this podcast. If you did and want to hear more, I'd appreciate it if you would either subscribe to this channel on YouTube or connect with your favorite platform through my website at www.thehydrogenpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. I very much appreciate it. Have a great day.